proceedings. Your second candidate that you're interviewing today is Mr. Paul Trombino. As I said, you've gotten all his background material and information, and he's just come back fresh from his tour of your community as well. He's been briefed in terms of the process, so we might have an opening comment or a statement and then be prepared to go to the PowerPoint. I would just remind you, please don't ask any questions during the PowerPoint exercise, and then after that, turn it back over to anything that you have in questions of what we've just said, and then work your way through the balance of the interview questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Paul, welcome on behalf of the City of Palm Coast, and we really appreciate you taking your time to come and interview with us, and we especially appreciate you going through the very long process to get to this point. So with that being said, you can go ahead and do your brief opening statement, and then you can go straight into your PowerPoint.
Okay. Thank you again for the time today. Again, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and council members, and members of the community this afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to present on some challenges, though I will outline there are many more opportunities in the city of Palm Coast and a very bright future. Today's presentation outlines key areas for sustainable growth with an emphasis and commitment to collaboration with the City Council, residents, and stakeholders. If you afford me this opportunity as appointed City Manager of Palm Coast, my commitment is to lead with transparency, collaboration, and a focus on sustainable growth to ensure the city remains a premier place to live, work, and play. Okay? So yes, Palm Coast and growth. Yes, Palm Coast has and is currently growing rapidly. I bring experience working in similar-sized community, going through high growth as the city of Greeley, Colorado is expected to double in size in the next 20 to 25 years. Growth at times can bring fear as it is change. Collaboration, transparency, and robust dialogue are critical to growth planning. The opportunity for growth brings the potential to impact demographics in the community. The city's median age is about 50.8, while Florida's median age is about 42.6. The city-county school system ranks in the top 30% in Florida and has an A rating. Schools are a key metric for potential businesses bringing jobs and young families. I often heard while watching numerous council meetings the news and reporting about wastewater challenges in the community, which are very important. Though, in my experience, every city's critical building block is a high-quality education system and affordable, high-quality child care choices. It appears, based on my research to date, you have both in Palm Coast. The education building block is critical to Palm Coast's future. Growth requires seeking out partnership, which are critical to sustainable development. At the City of Greeley, we made a focused effort to develop partnerships across local, state, and federal levels. This outreach strategy led to successful shared improvements and $125 million in grants for local infrastructure like stormwater and transportation. Master planning for future development is critical, and most importantly, Palm Coast's westward growth should embrace sustainability, technology, and community as a future city. With this mindset, process improvement within the city team will bring efficiency and remove complacency, resulting in sustainable development through intentional growth. In the city of Greeley, City Council recently approved a $1 billion entertainment district on the west side. We are embracing the opportunity to build a new, what we call a future city, within a city that's 155 years old. An incredible opportunity for us to implement new and improved processes which do not exist today through new technology, seamless infrastructure management, energy use, and utilities, which will attract businesses and residents. Palm Coast's challenge is the cycle of aging infrastructure built around the same time. As a result, Delayed capital investments increase cost improvements needed today and exacerbate need for revenue. Operating performance for infrastructure and project management process need collective improvement and coordination. The key opportunity for infrastructure and utilities is a single coordinated project management process and organizational coordination. Often, infrastructure and utilities, capital improvements are managed and constructed separately, creating layered costs within each of the areas. Creating real-time simple dashboards for projects and operations is important to instill trust in City Council and residents. There are 5 important areas across infrastructure and utilities as follows: planning, asset management, operations management, maintenance improvement program, and of course, a capital improvement program. The most important element out of all these areas is the derived investment strategy. For operational and capital improvements, so that investment strategy geared around operational and capital improvements. No matter how much funding you may have, with a poor investment strategy, you typically end up at the same place. EBITDA is a financial tool used to evaluate a company's operating performance. Operating performance and profitability by focusing on earnings from core business operations. For utility funds, this provides a view into the fund for sustainability rather than profitability. The tool can provide clear indications of operational efficiency. Using EBITDA for utility funds uses a common business practice to drive out inefficiency for long-term stability by reducing operating expenses, optimizing processes, energy costs, and balancing aligning the efficiency between maintenance and capital expenses for a greater return. The existing budget for the City of Palm Coast relies heavily on residential value taxes, those being property. There appears to be a limited presence of technology, manufacturing, and industrial businesses, which results in lower commercial activity, resulting in lower sales tax and franchise fees, and is not uncommon for cities experience rapid growth. Nearby communities contend and also compete for similar business investments. Creating an economic development authority would provide opportunities for better coordination and alignment with the county, Florida Economic Development Council, and the U.S. Economic Development Administration. This could provide more opportunities for collaboration, grants, incentives, tax-exempt bonding, and tax refunds for new businesses in targeted sectors. Business growth will diversify the tax base and reduce the reliance on residents for utility funding. The demand for market-ready sites is a driving factor in technology, manufacturing, and industrial businesses. Companies continue to reduce time allowed for making location decisions and time required to start construction. A site certification process would allow Palm Coast to recruit companies with certified sites ready to go. Additionally, this would include community engagement process and an analysis to market the site aligned with potential users and support from surrounding residents. In today's economic climate, companies are not willing to wait for a community to find an appropriate site and determine its suitability for development. We must lean forward to create these opportunities for the City of Palm Coast. The city has an ability to create this program and set the city apart from other communities, creating growth for current businesses and new companies. The challenge for community engagement during periods of rapid growth fuels residents' concerns for cost and quality of life. Additionally, assumed changes can often be shared without a clear question and answer document or an FAQ. The opportunity before the City of Palm Coast is to redefine communication around topics of growth, creating transparency of risks, pros and cons, trying to be consistent in creating creating easily consumable and timely information on upcoming decisions, which means including the impacts of not deciding. In my experience, the best community engagement happens within the community rather than City Hall. City Council, City Manager, and the City team are key members and have a part to play in creating a quality communication and engagement process. Thank you for allowing me this time to share some thoughts on the City of Palm Coast. I have much to learn about the city and will work hard to seek input and to listen and to understand. Together, we will tackle pressing challenges, capitalize on opportunities for growth and development, to create better outcomes for the city team members and the residents and businesses we serve. The City of Palm Coast's future, from my perspective, is very bright. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're going to come back to the dais, and the last interview, we did like a couple of questions each, and then we had follow-ups down the line. So, District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1 second while I... So, just wanted to ask you, what do you think is Palm Coast's single biggest asset in attracting new business and industries via economic development?
Again, as I mentioned before, the biggest asset for businesses coming for cities is an educational system. They want to bring jobs in. They're looking to attract employees, and a lot of times those employees are also looking at our school district.
Mr. Trombino, would
Yep.
you just do me a favor and maybe pull that mic, the
little
whole
bit.
bottom box
Oh,
to
the bottom
you?
box.
Yeah, there you
I'm sorry.
go. That way our
Apologize.
folks listening online can hear you better. There we go.
Okay, I apologize.
And would you repeat that answer? I apologize.
Yep. So to answer Councilmember Miller's question, what do I think is the biggest asset from an economic development perspective, if I have that one correct? I just wanted to restate it. So again, I would say in the research that I've done, the school system is a key ingredient. My experience in cities, having the building block of a school, and especially opportunities for childcare, are key ingredients and attraction for businesses, because that is the key thing that attracts the people that they're recruiting in those businesses. And as I've looked at Palm Coast, that building block is there. And from a past perspective, not having a good school system is a huge hurdle and challenge to get over. And so from my perspective, that leads towards economic development. So the key piece is the school system building block is here. And then the second piece that I would advocate is creating an economic development authority to help drive that potential business development, all types of business sectors, from manufacturing to other things in technology, I think set the Palm Coast up well. The third piece that I would rise is where Palm Coast is positioned. It's on an interstate highway. It has a rail line. It's kind of positioned in between some larger areas, whether it be Orlando or Jacksonville or even south down to Daytona. And that's a place where a lot of times companies want to be. They want to not be in that central core of a larger community. So that's what sets up Palm Coast to be successful. So from a supply chain logistics perspective, we're positioned well. And I'll mention also having an airport is a key ingredient for businesses. They like to, if they have a plant necessarily in sight, they want to drive 20 minutes, typically 25 minutes. Being able to fly in from a different area and easily see their facility is a key ingredient. So all of those advantages create tremendous opportunities. Communities a lot of times don't have those.
Thank you, I appreciate that. My second question is kind of a disclosure. Do you have any prior relationship with any members of council?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
2, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What is your number one strategy in reducing expenses or being fiscally conservative?
So first thing I would say is I don't know a lot on the fiscal side. I know some based on what I see publicly. I also don't know a lot operationally, right? So that's something I need to take time to learn. So first strategy is really listening and learning. I need to spend a good 60 days really understanding how the city works, how it functions, spending time with the city team, obviously spending time with council to really understand concerns in areas, maybe opportunities in areas. My strategy has always been is to learn from the city team, especially. The solutions typically are there, and usually they just haven't been brought forward. So that's the first thing. So when it comes to reducing expenses, the big thing, and I was trying to emphasize this, a lot of times the big capital expend for cities is utilities and infrastructure, and it's about freeing up. So my strategy has been in not only in the city of Greeley, when I was in Iowa and other places, is to try be more efficient and freeing up dollars to get more things in infrastructure. So it's really what I call the cost of delivery. The cost of delivery is a lot of times where you see layers of costs that you can start to squeeze down that allows you to turn that dollar into infrastructure, which is what we all want to see. We want to see more investments in infrastructure, whether that be in utilities and other things. So operational performance is a key area. It's not an easy thing to say, oh, we're just going to like tick it off and cut some operational performance. This is sort of, you dig in on this, and this is a long-term strategy for us to be more efficient in our delivery of projects, in our delivery of utilities. So really focusing on day-to-day operations is where you'll see, in my view, the biggest bang that will turn into additional infrastructure. I have examples of that in Iowa where we freed up $100 million of funds from really what we were doing in managing our projects that turned into more infrastructure that led to a much more positive result. People saw it, they saw the more investment, and that turned into actually additional funding. So the more efficient we drive efficiency, that likely reduces cost. There's typically then a support. So we're returning that dollar as quickly can into infrastructure. That's the strategy of how I would focus on reducing expenses.
Thank you for that. And my next question is, obviously, in this position, you have 5 different opinions oftentimes that you have to work with and try to get initiatives and policies across the finish line. What is your goal in achieving that?
So, for my goal, I will always say this, from a council's perspective, I'm here to execute policy direction. That's really important for us as a city team. We want to take that policy and we want to turn it into results and what I would call outcome for the community. So that's the first piece. The second piece is having good dialogue. I think it's really important for us. I mean, this will take time. We need to get to know each other. I need to have better understanding of priorities across all of you as a whole on council to make sure I understand where your focus is. And that will lead us to opportunities to have really good communication. There's a rhythm. I would like to say good organizations have a really good rhythm. And that's a rhythm of connection and meeting on a regular basis. So you're always informed where we are. If you have specific priorities, each of you, I should be able to track those and inform you of our status of where we stand and where we're going as a whole. And so there's a format that I like to use to do that as a whole. And that creates a rhythm for us organizationally to stay focused on those items. So that's typically how I've done it in the past, especially for any executive leader. It keeps them informed. They're always aware of status, where we are on tracking that, and how close we are to getting to the finish line, or if we're also having hiccups along the way where we need advice or support from you as a whole to help us work through some issues. So that should be a regular communication. That is a weekly sort of communication from my perspective, where we're also tracking those specific items of goals and things that you would like to see in the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ma'am. District 3?
Okay, I wanted to talk on the utility experience and what you've done in that area, but just to set the stage, the city of Greeley has 112,000 people, and you've been the Director of Public Works Department and recently, I guess, promoted to Managing Director, and maybe you could talk a little about what that means, but along the lines of question number 7, which is summarize your experience in managing, overseeing utility operations, and then the rest of that question in reviewing the position, profile, brochure, responsibilities of position. What specific areas do you feel exceptionally strong in, and what aspects of the position will you require to devote more time to master? But the other thing, you mentioned to me that you've had a lot of experience there. I don't want to force you to bring this out, but you've recently had a significant utility upgrade and plan, and with it some additional costs to the local population. So could you kind of go through that?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to try to hit these as we went through. From an experience perspective, I like to say my experience is in good engineering practice. It's one of the things that I am focused on, process improvement and practice when it comes to engineering. Utilities, all types of things have these components to it. And I've said this before, I said it in my document, have I managed directly a water or a wastewater fund? The answer is no, I have not. We have stormwater in the city, it's a utility fund just as the other ones. That sits within Public Works, the water and sewer sit differently. But I know good practice, and I understand good engineering practice, good operating practice across all 3 of those from an experience perspective. And that's why when you think of it as an asset, much less as a life issue, right? It's a quality of life direct issue. It's very important to understand those components. The thing that I would advocate on those is that I often say this, like I'm going to poke fun at engineers because I'm an engineer, is that we like to talk in asset condition, right? And we talk a lot of times very technically. That's not necessary. That doesn't connect it to the economic outcome, right? And that translation is sort of the piece that I've built my career around. It's translating it into the economics and the quality of life of what it means to me as a resident in a city, obviously, but more importantly, how it helps us in the future. So that's sort of I think what separates me a little bit from maybe traditional areas. And then in regards to our current area, as Councilmember just mentioned, in stormwater has been a significant challenge in the city of Greeley. We're, as I mentioned, a community 155 years old, and a lot of times communities of that age were they built in the lowest spot overall in the city. So City Hall actually is in the lowest spot, so it floods directly into City Hall often when we have any sort of significant rain event downtown. And so over the past, 20 plus years, we have had experience flooding across all of the buildings downtown, multiple businesses as a whole. It's been a long-standing issue, I would say at least 15. The stormwater utility rate is probably about 20 years old, so it's relatively what we call a young utility. And so that has been a long-standing issue in the community. We experienced another significant flooding last year, which also, again, had a lot of impact. And we've been working on a lot of studies and other things, but we're really getting to the point of starting to implement improvements within the community. So last year, we had a conversation with council. I brought forward a series of options for them. We sort of layered them out on options. And one of the options was to deal with everything. It turns into, it's about a $520 million investment. It required council to consider and approve a 61% rate increase in 1 year, which now presenting I thought it was important to share the information, right? And for them to consider what that means overall from an impact perspective. And because I think there became a point where council was frustrated, I think, with continued events, flooding events. And so we had a number of meetings with council, very good dialogue and debate over this, but they ended up approving that 61% rate increase. council member asked me if they had feedback, and they did, right, naturally. You can't, writing a story that says 61% is not great for anybody. And so, but the value of what's about ready to happen, the downtown business owners, the downtown residents, it was super important to them. It became a point where a little bit of a tide turned, and we had an opportunity, and we're actually changing the way we approach this. This is the other thing I would advocate. We're doing what's called a program, so a PMGC, so a program manager, general contractor. So we are going to hit the gas on this. The biggest thing from council's perspective, they were willing to take that step, but they needed to see immediate results. And that's what we're going to drive. And so we've actually been talking to them about this. We're about ready to put out an RFQ to hire a program manager. And I expect that we're going to have $520 million investment in under 5 years. So we are going to hit downtown. It's going to be impactful, but at the same time, they're going to see significant results. That improves the opportunity for growth and development downtown. There's tons of opportunity downtown. But that was an important conversation, I think, for the community as a whole. It's an area of the city that hadn't had investment. It's an old area, old infrastructure, doesn't really have a stormwater system at all. The river passes through it, all these types of things. So that's sort of the conversation we had a little bit this morning. Great project, very difficult conversation, and I'm very thankful for the Greeley City Council entertaining the conversation, much less taking action on it. It was a really good, and I think the dialogue was overall really good about the challenges as a whole.
Right, and the other question I had, I'd like to always not forget about public safety and security. And we have a system here where the sheriff, the county sheriff controls, essentially all the police departments except for a couple of small city in Bunnell and Flagler Beach. But the fire departments are separate. You might talk a little about your experience where you are versus the way it's set up here.
Sure.
And I think it's very important to understand that and make sure that we continue to move forward there with a good system.
Yeah. So I wanted to come back to the last question too you asked, which is the position. So this last year,
position,
yep,
right.
you asked that. I'm sorry about that. So this last year, the city manager created a new position called managing director. The intent of that was really to focus on, so I have not only public works and transportation, as we call it, I also have some things that are coming forward. So all major projects in the entire city CIP. He really wanted to house that. And a lot of times what happens in a capital improvement is you're maybe be focused on long-term projects, 50-year, 100-year impact projects. It could be, a development like I mentioned here with West Greeley and Cascadia and the entertainment district. And what happens a lot of times is the CIP can be sort of a little bit of an octopus. It could be going in different directions, so it's hard to align towards that priority. So the intent of that was to try to align those pieces and then take major responsibility for any major project in the city. So that's the position that I ended up sliding into. And then in regards to public safety in the city of Greeley, we do have a Greeley Police Department and a Greeley Fire Department. Obviously that work directly for the city manager. But I would also say I've had experience obviously in other states where a lot of times public safety was a partnership, and that's not uncommon for a lot of communities where maybe the sheriff handles a lot of the local law enforcement. There's still a fire, or sometimes even there's a district that around it. So the city of Greeley has a few of those, and we have some districts as a whole too. The key thing that I would advocate is between the city and the county is having a good partnership. For the city, as I was mentioning, we're about 40 square miles. We have a growth boundary of 90 square miles, so it's very large. I just got off a tour. It was the amount of growth opportunity in the city. It was much more than you can see on a map in one of these meetings. So it took me back a little bit, the size of the growth and how far it was, right, from maybe where we are today. That's very similar to the city. And so all of that area in our growth boundary is still in the county. So there's a lot of that area still under county control. So that partnership between the city and the county is really important. It's something we talk about all the time because we'll start annexing pieces of that, of developments. There's roadways, streets, all these types of things. And so whether it is public safety, as Councilmember asked, or both on fire and police, but also in infrastructure. That partnership is really, really important for us as the city grows here in Palm Coast to make sure that we're unfolding the development in a way that provides opportunity and growth. And I also think a little bit, I'll throw this in, as I mentioned, I think there's a great opportunity at partnership with the county at the airport. I strongly believe that an airport authority board would be a great thing between the city and the county. It's what we have in the city. It is actually Greeley-Weld County Airport Authority, and so council members are a part of that. It creates a much better coordination and partnership, and it's actually driven towards economic development. We'll have about $40 million in this rural airport right now, with all types of corporate development coming, and that was because of that partnership between the city and county.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Trombino, again, welcome to the city of Palm Coast. We hope you enjoy your time here, and thank you for putting your name into the hat for consideration to serve as our city manager.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to use my time. I want to confirm some things on your resume, if that's okay, and I'm just
Sure.
going to kind of go through them real quick versus kind of an open question. I saw that you have an engineering degree from University of Wisconsin, and you do have your professional engineering license in the states of Wisconsin and Colorado. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you also have your ICMA, that's International City Manager Association. I'm looking at Doug over here. Is that right? ICMA? That's the county manager.
City, county, yeah.
Okay,
You got it.
ASCE is the Association of Civil Engineers.
Yep, that's correct.
And APWA, is that Public Works?
American Public Works.
Public Works,
Association.
okay.
Yep.
As Chief Executive Officer and Director of the Department of Transportation for the entire state of Iowa, I just want to confirm, it was a Senate-confirmed position, so the governor had to nominate you, and you were confirmed twice by the state Senate?
Yes, so the term's only, it doesn't matter how long, so every 4 years you have to be reconfirmed. So yeah,
Okay.
I did it twice.
And then you were also nominated by President Trump in his first administration to serve as the Director of the Federal Highway Administration, which, by the way, fellow council members, I think that's the position that Derek Bars has been nominated to. So, and your sponsor was Joni Ernst.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
You also in Iowa, so you serve as the Director and Homeland Security Advisor and Chief Operating Officer. Is that under Governor Kim Reynolds?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and in that job, you led a flood response in 2019 in recovery efforts, and you also coordinated statewide pandemic response during COVID?
That is correct.
So
yes.
you've got some emergency management chops there. And then you served as the Director of Public Works, I guess, at the City of Greeley. You also served as the Interim Director of Economic Development. Is that correct?
Yes, yep, so I served as interim.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm resume. I'll
Yep.
come back to other questions.
Absolutely.
In the next
Appreciate
round.
that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. The councilman just spoke about it. I was going to ask you about throughout your career, your certifications in the NIMS, National Incident Management System.
Yes.
Advanced ICM. Do you have all those certifications?
Yes, I haven't done them recently, but that was during Homeland Security and while I was in running Iowa DOT. Subsequently, in the city, I actually implemented an emergency response playbook for not only the city, but it's really focused on public works, but we included all the departments on that.
So you have all the major FEMA
Yes.
certifications. HC, you have that certification?
I don't think I have that one.
That's the Homeland Security Training Exercise Program?
I don't think I have that one.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
long shot on that one.
Yeah.
No worries.
Okay.
That's the only question I had. Councilman Miller, you have anything, any follow-ups?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I got a couple more here. So I think the first one is why Palm Coast? Why'd you choose us?
So I would say, a couple things. The first being, I was only having an opportunity to serve as city manager. Obviously, is something that I think about in the sense of the career that I've had as a whole. When it came to this position, when I saw it, it was actually in December, and my interests were on two areas. One, I typically have only been tried to, if I moved in a position, I usually like to have family close by, and I have family that's been out here since the early 70s in the Miami area. So that's important from my wife and I's perspective. We always wanted to move somewhere where we feel like we're touching our family. The second piece that I would say is having done the research on Palm Coast, kind of getting to understand it, where it is, sort of the challenges and maybe opportunities within the community. And to really look at it from a perspective, a lot of things I think happening in the community, as I mentioned before, lots of development, rooftops, sometimes creates a lot of concern from community in a lot of ways. So it seemed like a ripe opportunity to really bring, what I think I bring is steady leadership, and in the sense of really growing a team and having the opportunity to form that team. And from the perspective of a one-team approach, as I often say. I've had the opportunity in the city really to come into a community that I like to say was growing, but their processes weren't growing with them, right? So they're sort of a little bit out of balance, and that can happen. And I think as I look at the community today, I got to spend some time with a lot of the department directors, which was pretty fun as a whole. It was a great conversation to hear more of the substance of what's happening and going on, and sort of the work that they're doing, which was great. And it seems even more so to me today that there's just an incredible opportunity and a building block to build on to make Palm Coast an incredible city as a whole. And part of that is, as I mentioned before, I'm really interested in how a city functions in 2040 or 2050, right? I talked a little bit about this with some of the department directors, and thinking about what a new city looks like. Like as you do the westward expansion, would we build that city as it is today? Like in the same way that we would build this city? And I think the answer is no. And to really think about, so growth, especially in the city this size, is where I think most of the growth is overall when you think cities. So if you look at this, and I'm gonna sort of get into this a little bit, it'll be fun, hopefully. So is that there's new cities are sort of the interesting piece of what's in the future. There's about 15 to 20 new cities around the globe. A lot of those are in the Middle East and other places. There's some that's starting to come to North America. So the opportunity, and what I was trying to convey, whether I did it well or not, it's a good question, is constructing a new city, which is what the westward expansion is, and doing that from a completely different template, right? To think through how would you change the way we serve that city, or how would it function so that it functions completely better? My belief is, long-term, it's the cities that do that adapt to that, and think about what that future is from a city. And as an example, as I would like, think of a 3D model of a city, above ground and below ground, where you know where everything is. You can immediately adjust to those things. That's what you're on the cusp of doing. You have that ability to do across all of utility, all of transportation, everything you do day in, day out. That creates a better customer experience as a whole. And I think that is what what I heard from the city team. They would love to do. That's the stuff that they're interested in. I think it's why we're all here, is to create this incredible outcome for residents and businesses. So that's what attracted me to the community, is it has incredible bones, as I would like to say, incredible opportunity of growth. And not all communities have that. A lot of cities don't have that as a whole. And so that's what was interesting to me. And I think that lots of conversations, there's always going to be challenges as a whole. But bringing that team together, obviously in conjunction with City Council, I think I have a skill set that I can do that well and create a very successful long-term path for the city.
Thank you for that answer. Can you tell us why you think you're best for this role?
Sure.
That's 25.
Sorry.
Sorry, just listing the numbers in case anyone's taking notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Sorry. I would say, number one, I'm not coming here and telling you I have tons of city manager experience, okay? I do not, right? So I'm not sugarcoating that. I do bring forward, though, I think, leadership and experience, not only in political environments, but also in all of the areas that a city functions as a whole, that I think is different as a whole. I also think what sets me apart is my experience. I have experience across multiple states. I worked in tons of cities, obviously from a DOT perspective, and I have a good understanding of what the partnerships require, right? So a lot of times cities, whether it's a partnership with DOT or US DOT or the feds and the state, I understand those things and I understand how to navigate those things well. And so I think that's sort of a little bit of uniqueness to who I am. And I guess the other piece that I would say is I'm always straightforward. I'm always going to give you a straightforward answer. And I think that's what you want, right, from a perspective of potentially serving as a role as city manager. And advice. I would always give you a clear recommendation. It doesn't mean you have to take the recommendation, by the way. And I will adapt to that. And I think the other thing that I probably bring is adaptability. And I have ability to shift and find solutions, what a lot of times you don't see. And I think the final thing that sort of goes with that is I have a strong vision. So I'm and I like pushing a little bit on boundaries and trying to connect things that you don't normally connect, right? And examples of that I think are in my packet about supply chain design in the state of Iowa, connecting the economics of things that I don't think people normally do, right? And so I think that sets that apart, and a lot of it is experience to some degree. And then, I took a path, as I like to say, I took two different paths. I sort of went down an economic side, went into the finance, corporate trust, bond administration, and then sort of shifted and went into transportation. A lot of questions from my father when I did that, by the way, probably rightly so. But it turned out okay. They came together in a different way for me, and I think that sets me apart from a skill set as a whole. And then, I think I will do a good job. I'm confident of it. I'm confident I will return and provide an investment strategy, I think, for the city and an outcome that improves the community long term. It'll set the strategy from a long-term perspective.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Trombino, in your first 30 days, the objective that you listed was to establish a strong foundation by understanding the city's operations, culture, and community dynamics. You said that you'd be listening, learning, and laying the foundation of productive relationships. So if we look, Council, at question 6, this goes hand in hand with that. How do you facilitate open and transparent communication with the governing body, staff, boards, commissions, residents, and other stakeholders?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. the key thing really comes from is listening. I can't say this enough, I know it sounds easy. And the reason being is that the way I have learned, and there's a few of these examples, some communication training and stuff that I've done years ago that impacted my life. And there's two of those pieces. And that is realizing that every single person you meet for a reason, and there's something to learn from them. And my view on communication, especially listening more rather than speaking a lot, is typically my style, is because there's so much value in that, and that takes time and it takes work, right? So from my perspective, I really want to get a sense for the community. How I do that, just as a whole, is walking into places. I've done this a lot in places where I just want to walk in, meet business owners, talk to people on the street. I typically travel around. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I love my electric bike. I use it all the time. And it allows me to traverse through neighborhoods and see things differently. So what's important for me is to get to sort of touch and feel the city and hear feedback as a whole, and to hear concern, right? It's okay. Like I want to hear ideas, right, too. That's usually what you're really getting as a whole. So that is sort of that foundational piece when I talk about community, is really hearing from them and understanding, which means I can't do it in this building. I actually have to go out and do that a lot. And the strategy I did in Iowa, I took every event that I could take, and I went across the state and met with every single person that was willing to meet with me. And I did that for about 60 days because it took me some time to get across the state. Here, same thing. I want to meet with people, hear from their perspectives. So that's the first thing on the community side, so I'm kind of taking these in reverse. And then coming back to council is, from my perspective, I need to understand your priorities. I need to clearly understand what your focus is in your areas. And I'm going to put those into a format. I use what's called an EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. It's one of my favorite things to do. It really allows us to stay focused on what those priorities are, and as a team, as a whole. And so, and that means I have to instill trust. I have to earn your trust every single day I walk through this door, which I commit to you I will. And grow that over time. And that means making sure you're aware of what we're doing, where we are, if we're on track or off track a lot of times, and sometimes we get off track. It's important that you hear that directly from us. That instills trust between, ultimately, in this role as city manager, but really, as I would say, the city team and city council, okay? And then in regards to the city team, such a fun conversation today. Very excited about the opportunity to have to work with them. And part of what I've always learned is that the city team it's their career, right? I'm not advocating like I want to be a short-term city manager, okay? But city managers come and go, right? Maybe on a different schedule, right? I would prefer. But at the same time, trying to establish a foundation for them that the organization is theirs, right? So my big focus in the organization is really helping the city team be empowered, right? And feel not only responsible, but empowered to make things better, to improve processes, to actually make everybody's engagement better within the organization, make every day as efficient as possible. And there's a couple of processes that I use that I think are really important. The first one, I always like to do this, is communication, right? And so what's your desired communication environment? Something that I've done with multiple organizations. And my experience is it's always the same: open, trusting, positive. That's what they want. And you ask them, what's their undesired environment? It's completely the opposite. Everybody wants this, right? We all have responsibility to do and get there, and there's only one way to do it, is that we are in the desired environment 100% of the time. That's not easy, that's hard, right? And so That's sort of the key message that I would send to the city team, and that brings us together, right, as a whole, and creates a long-term strategy for growth. I want to see the city team grow and develop more and more leaders for the organization over the next 20 to 30 years and lay a foundation for you and for the city to have really good leadership coming out and growing within the city. So those are how I tackle the three things.
And then my other question is, in your plan, it says for the remaining 6 months, so after the 180-day period.
Yeah.
Develop a growth management roadmap integrating findings of first year to ensure sustainable development practices. And for the benefit of council, that goes hand in hand with question 19, which is what strategies would you follow to help Palm Coast address its growth management concerns?
Yeah. So the key thing, I think, for Palm Coast growth is really balance, right? So what's happening, and I say this all the time, a lot of communities get this, tons of rooftops, it sort of starts to get away, and then there's a concern from city residents and businesses and all those other types of things. And so we have to set a strategy early on. Obviously, I think with what's coming up in the development code and other things will really help us set that strategy to balance out funds, right? I think we don't want to the key thing for the city is we know that there's a track where the revenue and that's coming in is starting to balance out, right? It's good for the residents. No, it's obviously good for the businesses. It's good for all of us. And so from my perspective, that's the Economic Development Authority. And getting that built into, as we think about land development and what's coming forward, that requires a partnership. That requires us sort of digging in, doing site certification. All of those types of things, I think, create more transparency of why this is important, and how it fits to the long-term strategy. And I know that, having watched council meetings, I know there was a lot of challenge with this recently, with a potential fuel a facility coming on and some debate. And that's exactly what this is directed towards to do, is to start having that conversation early. So we're establishing the types of opportunities that could come to a site, informing the residents, having conversations with them. And I think those are the key things that will really help the city long term.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Greeley is not a coastal community. Palm Coast, their county, not only have 18 miles of ocean beach, but the intercoastal waterway, miles and miles of saltwater canals. It's a two-edged sword. On one side, that's a reason that Palm Coast is attractive for people to come here.
I saw it.
We're
It's
in Florida,
beautiful.
on the east coast of Florida. But it's also, the other side of that are hurricanes, floods, and various climatic conditions that really do cause an awful lot of the efforts of the government here. We have, significant emergency operations centers, and when those major things hit, they really use up most of your time. So in planning here, I'd say flexibility has to be a big key. It also can affect the budget, your reserves, and everything else. So talk a little bit about what Greeley is like in that area, which I don't think you have. You have, storms and things, but not the same kind of thing, and how you view that and would take it into consideration in doing your planning.
Yeah. So first thing I would say is emergency management it's a muscle you have to exercise. I can't say this enough. I did put that in my plan because it's a question that I have. I just don't know, right? So there's things I just don't know about that. A lot of time, my experience in Greeley, we didn't have an emergency management. It was very, what I would call soft at best. I think it's substantially changed and improved. We have an OEM. We have started all these pieces now. The exercising that piece is the key ingredient. If you don't exercise it regularly so that you're prepared, it's a key ingredient. And part of what I would advocate is, especially when it comes to infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, intercoastal, all these other types of things, there are huge advantages for us to manage these events, okay? And as I often say in the city of Greeley, will it still flood when we finish the stormwater system that we're going to do downtown? And the answer is yes, but it should be less impactful, right? And so what we're really trying to do is build a resilient system that maybe feels it, but then it drops away, right? So the cleanup, all of those types of things start to drop away, and life gets back to normal, as we like to say. It's really important in any emergency event. I've been around major floods on both the Missouri River, Mississippi River. I've dealt with ports in Wisconsin. I have tons of experience, I think, in dealing, unfortunately, with very challenging emergency events. I've not experienced a hurricane and managing that directly, but the procedure and process is what I know and how that can function and function well. And then that also relates ultimately to the resiliency in what we build in infrastructure. It's very important for us. This is a big topic nationally, by the way, is it's often, and the processes, both at the federal and state levels do this sometimes, is where the impact comes, right? And then we actually rebuild it exactly as it is, rather than maybe tweaking it just a bit, okay? And that's this resiliency conversation that's happening. It's happening in the transportation world and in other areas nationally. And I actually believe that's a key ingredient for us, is we need to do certain things as storms impact to make sure that the system recovers, and so it's resilient, and its recovery is quick, and there's low impact. We're not going to change maybe the track that we're on, but there's ways for us and tools out there that we can be very effective and change the way and lessen the way the impact happens to the community and gets lives back on. So that would be my key focus. Those are just what I call best practices. I've learned them, unfortunately. In a lot of cases, you learn those the hard way, going through events that don't go well across a couple different states, and you start to figure those out. But those would be the key thing. It's one of the things I really want to understand is how it functions in the city, how it works, what's the practices, how do we engage with the county, all those stuff besides the state as a whole. I just need to get my sense and my fingers on that to some degree. That would be a key thing for me in the first 6 months.
No more.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Trombino, I'm encouraged by the use of the term EBITDA because, those of us that are small business owners live in that world as we try to, build value for our companies. But with that, so this is question number 12 for my colleagues. Can you please describe your experience and skills in capital infrastructure planning, maintenance, and financing? In your response, please highlight any related creative financing strategies you have used to address CIP infrastructure shortfalls, or, for example, utilities. I think you touched on EBITDA as an example for our utilities, and I think we can all agree that we need to do a better job in finding efficiencies within our utilities. But again, if you could describe your experience and skills in capital infrastructure planning, maintenance, and financing, and highlight any creative financing strategies you've used to address CIP shortfalls.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. So infrastructure has been sort of a key component of my career, and really the planning and management of large CIPs as a whole, large projects as a whole. I've had lots of opportunity to be part of that in different ways, especially as I got into my engineering career. And so some examples of that, I was program was about $1 billion a year. I worked with we have Transportation Commission, so I report to the director, but the commission actually does all of the policy relative to what transportation is. Incredible group, nonpartisan as a whole, and just an incredible opportunity, something I didn't experience in Wisconsin. And the opportunity to sort of work with them and set policy alignment for what they wanted to achieve as a whole is a huge win, as I like to say, for a lot of states. It opened my eyes to some degree. If you think of it in a city council perspective, having a body help set those policy pieces, understand, in this case, the city and community, really helps us on an infrastructure size as we plan out. Because a lot of times, even though we work in the city, we live in the city, we don't necessarily have the same understanding. And so that's, just one example. So as I mentioned before, in the city of Greeley, what's fascinating as the city grows, the challenge with this is the infrastructure costs grow. The projects become larger and harder a lot of times to fund. And so in the city, we tried to set a strategy to really focus on partnerships. And we had partnerships, but we didn't really delve into those partnerships. As I like to say, a city that, as Palm Coast side, and it's growing, needs partnerships. It needs partnerships, obviously, with the county. It needs partnerships with the state. It needs partnerships at the federal level. Those are important because of what's happening in the community and how it's growing. Our connections and opportunities that we have with Interstate 95 and all of those types of things just add to that partnership level and how that creates a better outcome in the community. And so in the city, we really strived hard to really develop those partnerships. We had a longstanding project that's been around since 2014. It was two interchanges, two grade-separated interchanges along US 34, right in the middle of the city. And we sort of tried to approach that, coming up with a different way to look at the project, coming up with a different way to really maybe lay out the project as a whole. We ended up getting $50 million in two separate grants for that project from USDOT. In addition, we tried to approach it from the perspective, is there a different way for us to get funding, potentially using debt, right? Never a great conversation, I think, as a whole. In Colorado, because we're a Tabor state, everything has to go to a ballot for that. And we came up with an idea of using TIFIA funds. So Transportation Infrastructure Financing Investment Act is TIFIA, is what it stands for. It was actually passed in 1998, very early in my career, as I like to say. And it was really about, because a lot of infrastructure, if you look globally, there's a finance component to it. There's a lot of times this delta that you can't get to. You can get all the rest of the funding, and then you have this little gap that you can't get the project across. And a lot of times what they set up, they were trying to set up infrastructure banks. A lot of states did that over a series of years. And then recently there's been a lot of change. TIFIA is at the federal level through USDOT. So it's very low cost, very inexpensive funding from an interest perspective. And then they have some very unique things about how the payback comes, because you can front load it, back load it, you can change it. So we were really interested in seeing if that could fill the gap for us, because we knew we would have a gap in this project. But it was really a high need. It was really the number one priority from City Council. Been around for they had done a ballot initiative for the project. It didn't happen because they didn't have enough dollars. So we ended up doing a second ballot initiative. It was this last November, and we did it to issue debt. The debt was really intended for low-cost federal funding, and passed overwhelmingly at over 70%, which we were super happy with. Very thankful for residents and council to support that. And that will allow us to take this project to completion. So we've actually kicked off the final pieces of design, and we'll push in. So it's that partnership as you think about infrastructure. There's always opportunities to find connectivity. And the other thing that I would mention before is the connectivity between the pieces. If we're doing major infrastructure on US 34, which comes right through the city, that impacts water, that impacts sewer, that impacts electricity, it impacts all these things. And really trying to create a better partnership where we're making long-term improvements in that. Affects stormwater for sure. We have a big ditch that goes through it. So all those types of things are critical when it comes to infrastructure management. As I mentioned before, it's understanding their overall connectivity, because there's ways to lower cost in those improvements if we strategize them all together from an investment strategy. So from an experience perspective, I've done that across 2 different states. Obviously, I've done it now in the city level. There's more opportunity for us in the future, especially in the city of Greeley. Tremendous opportunity, and I believe that be the case here also.
Sir, second question, Mr. Mayor. Given the recent controversies that have occurred in Palm Coast, and even as recent as this week, tell us why you remain interested in the position of city manager.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, all cities have controversies. I don't know any that don't, to be honest with you. And they go through times like that. And you know, that's sort of coming back to maybe Councilmember Miller's question before. I really see the community as having an incredibly bright future. That's what attracts me to it. Is there some bumpiness that maybe is happening now? Yes, right. I don't shy away from that. You know, some people might call it chaos. I call it opportunity from my perspective. I like that in that sense. I think there's just, especially again, as I mentioned, meeting a lot of the department directors and some folks from the team, told me even more. Like, there's a great team here, and there's tons of opportunity. And are there things to improve? The answer is yes, right? I think absolutely. Improvement is a never-ending process, and so I think there's lots of opportunity here. I would always say I appreciate the dialogue that I've seen with council. I've appreciated what I saw, the conversations in council, and so from my perspective, having the opportunity to be a part of that and work with you, I view as a very good thing. I don't view it any other way, and I think that there's a demonstrated I think passion from the community, as I would say, that I think there's a strong interest in seeing the community continue to be better and improve. Does everybody have an idea of how that is? Yes, I love that. And so seeing the passion in the community and community meetings is a big piece for me. That tells me people want to be engaged. They have advice, as I like to say, and they have ideas. And that's a good place to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, if you've watched a lot of the city council meetings, you've probably seen me ask this question before. Give me a situation in your professional career where you were faced with an ethical dilemma, meaning you had to make a choice, you know, a hard right over an easy wrong. So just take a brief moment and think of an experience in your professional career where you had to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. We face ethical dilemmas every day. If you can't think of one professionally, think of one in your private life.
Sure, yeah. So I'll give you one. So I mentioned before, the city did a ballot initiative, right? So when council creates the ballot, right, basically we do it it gets set in August for the November, right? So the ballot, and we were doing a ballot initiative for, we have a food tax, and then also this debt. That was what happened last year. And they were kind of paired together. So the food tax was up, you know, so it sunsets every 7 years in the cycle. And so this year, council paired the food tax because the debt that we were going to issue for our project that I just mentioned is going to be paid back with the food tax. So the way they position the food tax and the transportation is the two pieces together. But they also were asking to not to remove the sunset from the food tax. Fairly controversial, right? Especially in those days over the last year when it comes to food. And what happens then is the city, we take a position where we're not pro or against, right? We have to take this independent position because typically what happens for a lot of communities in Colorado, there's a group that comes forward. It could be a group for or a group against, right? So once the ballot gets published, right, there is a point where we are neutral, right? We have to be neutral under law. And The group that was forming called and asked me to, change a process within the department because one of their group entities wanted us to change something that they felt wasn't helping the work that they got, okay? And ethically, I was not going to do that, okay? And I did not. And I conveyed that we were not going to change a process because of the ballot initiative and what this could have impacted them in either a positive or a negative way. And because ethically I did not feel that was correct. And I wouldn't do that as a whole. And so, and I informed our city attorney, our city manager, that like I'm not taking this call, I'm not calling this person back because I don't feel that that's ethically the right question to ask during this process.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any follow-up questions from the dais?
I do have one follow-up. Mr. Trombino, your resume is very impressive. I do need to be assured, though, that as city manager, you would be able to kind of take yourself out of more of the technical. You seem like a technician, very much so, which isn't a bad thing. But being able to be a city manager is a very high-level, multitasking, not micromanaging position. How would you be able to kind of take yourself, remove yourself from that technician part of you and truly manage an organization of this size efficiently?
I appreciate the question very much. And I've never been called a technician before, so I kind of like it as a whole. And I'll give you examples. Iowa DOT, right? My job wasn't to do the engineering, right? It wasn't to figure out what the capital, all these details of what projects are, much less determine what type of pavement or what type of steel, those types of things. That wasn't my job. My job was really to lead the organization and to grow the team and do the right things to remove inefficiency or remove barriers that is causing them as a team. And that is my focus, right? I say that every day. Maybe I got too technical today, is now that I look on it. That is not how I function. As I look at public works and transportation, much less being managing director, I'm really looking at fostering the team, ultimately, and growing them and helping provide opportunity for them to be better, right? Creating more empowerment in what they do as a whole, balancing that, obviously, at times between city council and what we do as a whole. So, my job is to lead in general, and I've demonstrated that, I think, over and over. I don't get into the technical. If they ask, I give an opinion, right, like anything else. I may have an idea, right, but that's really about it. Overall, my view, and the city manager, actually, my perspective is it builds on my strengths, right, in the sense of communication being one, vision, trying to connect things that maybe we haven't connected, finding opportunities, engaging with people, creating good communication and dialogue. Those are the sort of my foundational pieces as a whole. I do not actually delve into the technical. I say this jokingly, but it's kind of true. I'm sort of a half-baked engineer, and I started out in economics. That's how I think. I can't get off of that, so I see things from an economics perspective, how it impacts people's lives, those types of things. I don't see it from a technical side. I can do the technical, but it's not my skill set. So, as a whole, it's the opposite. It's, I think, leadership, good process improvement. Those are the things that I think overall I help lead really well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions from the dais? Councilman Miller?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Councilman Stevens? No?
I do have one last question, so we got a couple minutes here. I just happened to think of this. You just recently were essentially promoted, I believe, to
That's
managing
correct. Yeah.
director, from Director of Public Works. Did you have a system in place in that department where you were developing people to replace you as you moved up?
Yes.
And did that happen, that somebody that you were fostering kind of been developing? Because I think that's important for management too, developing, you know, the force, including people to replace yourself as you move on to other jobs.
Totally agree. Yes. Thank you very much for the question. I would say this, two sides to this I'm going to give you. Over the last 3 years, we've came together, we created an all public works team. In addition, we created an above and beyond work award for public works, team members, people. I'm not a part of that process. Different group, some of our leaders and team members manage that process. We do at the meeting. I actually don't speak at the meeting. I just sort of facilitate, give service awards, some other things. Part of what the meeting really is intended to do is to show what everybody's doing. In the Public Works team, we're not all in the same place, unfortunately. We're sort of spread around the city in different areas. And getting them all together, because we have transit, we have fleet, we have facilities similar to what you see here, we have engineering, all those types of things. And what they do is, which is super fun, is the divisions within Public Works each share a process improvement or project that they're working on. We've had facilities team share some of what they're doing to help make the facilities better every day and make it healthier for everybody. It is the most fun, one of the most fun meetings that we do for me personally, because I get to see them embraced. A lot of times our team members don't want to present to their colleagues and 200 people in a room, but they do. And it's a wonderful experience to see them grab on. They are owning their process, they're improving their process, and they demonstrate that at these annual meetings, and it's just been a phenomenal experience from my perspective. So that, to me, is the building that foundation of them owning and getting better and improving that. The meetings have been so fun as a whole. And so yes, do I believe that we have built a core leadership team that has changed Public Works as a whole and transportation? Absolutely. I feel confident in that. Do we have leadership that has developed across all of our areas that are ready to grow and take on more responsibility? The answer is yes. We have not filled the public work. We're going to about ready to advertise that position as a whole, and then a couple of other ones that will provide. And I expect that those opportunities will come from people within that are currently in that process. I don't control all of that, so, but I expect that's where it's going to come from. So.
Or you have any further questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, we're going to allow you a closing statement and any questions you have of us. If you want to close out with asking us any questions.
I don't. I just want to say the first off is I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the dialogue that I had with each of you today. It's great to physically be in this room. As I was mentioning before, sometimes on the screen it looks darker than it is brighter in here. So I was happy to see the light in the room. And so, you know, I'd say this, you know, from a closing perspective, I feel privileged to stand here before you, that I made it to this point, to be honest with you. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the dialogue with obviously all of you, obviously the residents to some degree, and tonight, and most importantly, the team, the city team. I got to meet a lot of them as we maneuvered around the building today. The tour was great as a whole, short, but great. And so I am taken by what I think is an incredible city who has a very bright future. So from my perspective on the closing, I think, as I mentioned, I think I'll do a good job. I actually think I'll do a great job. And I think I bring skill sets that you don't normally see across a lot of different areas. and I will lead the team very effectively as a whole and focused on a one-team perspective. It's very important to me for them to feel valued and a part of the decisions that we make as a whole, including decisions with you. So I think from my perspective, I just can't say I've learned so much today, and I feel even so much better about the opportunity. The final thing that I would say is I respect your decision, right? You have a big decision to make, and I totally understand that. And I would always advocate you're going to make the right decision for the city, whether I'm included in it or not. Like, I think that you're going to make a great decision for the city long term. And whatever that is, I totally respect that. And I just really thank you for your time and your candidness in the conversations that we've had today. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And on behalf of the entire city, I would like to thank you for making it through the process and coming to visit our paradise. Yeah. And I wish you and your family the best of luck in the future. And anyone else have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Trombino. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And the next step is 6 p.m., the meet and greet of the candidates by the public, right, Doug?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. This concluded the public aspect for the interviews, and this evening, the reception, I believe, is scheduled here.
Yes, sir.
Encourage you certainly to be here to engage with your constituents as they get a chance to meet and mingle with the candidates. I normally encourage, once a reasonable-sized crowd is here, to do an official welcome, recognize the various elected officials that are in attendance. If you would like to turn that over to me, I'm more than glad to make a public statement about how we got to this point. And then I've asked each of the candidates to be prepared to do a very brief kind of high-level introduction, and we'll let them kind of scatter in the room, and the crowd will get a chance to meet and mingle, and encourage you to be part of that process this evening.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't think, Vice Mayor, can you handle that? Because I've got something I got to be at this
I
evening.
absolutely can, yes.
All right, the Vice Mayor is going to handle that. But thank you, Doug. I really appreciate it, and I think you brought us these are two quality candidates, and we're going to have a tough decision to make as far as the path forward. But I appreciate your time and your effort, and I greatly appreciate them coming and trying to be part of our city.
Absolutely, thank you. And just, I guess, to close, for those who may be watching, is my understanding, no decision will be made today. Obviously, you still have another process. I believe the mayor and the council have set up a meeting for next Tuesday, I believe at 6:30. Looking for a nod of an affirmation of that.
Yes, sir.
6 p.m., I think.
6
p.m. Thank you. I appreciate the confirmation on that, in which case I assume we'll have a chance to deliberate. I'll participate remotely on that and help you facilitate any of that conversation, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Mr. Thomas. And with that, we're going to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
You adjourn.